Inside the airport control tower, controllers stare at their radar screens in horror. A plane with 71 people on board is flying erratically over the airport, circling, diving. "Too low! Pull up!" The ground proximity warning system screams in the cockpit. The aircraft descends to 175 feet above the ground, barely clearing the terrain. Then it climbs steeply, banking 45 degrees, heading straight for the domestic terminal. In the control tower, controllers watch helplessly as the aircraft hurtles toward them. They duck behind their consoles. The plane misses the tower by mere meters. Inside the cockpit, the 52-year-old captain is crying, cursing, chain-smoking cigarettes. He's been ranting for the entire flight about his personal problems, his depression, his resignation, a female pilot who filed a complaint against him. Beside him, a 25-year-old first officer sits frozen. She's terrified, but too intimidated to challenge her captain. The captain makes one final desperate attempt to land, diving toward the runway at an impossible angle. Today, you are going to see how a captain, completely out of his mind, loses control of a flight and causes a disaster. This is the bizarre story of US Bangla Flight 211.
I am Captain Jack Mercer. What you're going to watch now is the story from the perspective of a pilot who has lived and seen a lot in 25 years of experience. Welcome aboard. All right, we are on March 12th, 2018, midday at Dhaka, Bangladesh. US Bangla Airlines Flight 211 is preparing for a routine 1.5-hour flight to Kathmandu, Nepal, the home of Mount Everest, that attracts mountaineers and climbing lovers from all over the world. On board are 67 passengers, most of them Nepali and Bangladeshi nationals. 2 flight attendants prepare the cabin, and in the cockpit, 2 pilots with very different levels of experience. Who are they? The captain is 52-year-old Abid Sultan. He's a former Bangladesh Air Force fighter pilot with over 22 years of flying experience. He joined US Bangla Airlines in 2015 and works as an instructor pilot. He's flown to Kathmandu more than 100 times, so he knows this route intimately, right? Colleagues describe him as calm, patient, well-spoken, professional. Well, this is difficult to believe, and you will understand why soon, my friend. In the right seat is First Officer Pritula Rashid, just 25 years old. She's the first female pilot at US Bangla Airlines, a source of pride for her and the company. She has 390 flight hours under her belt, still building experience. Today is special for her. It's her first flight to Kathmandu, and Captain Sultan is providing her with the specialized training required to land at this notoriously challenging airport. Why challenging? Well, Kathmandu sits in the narrow, bowl-shaped valley surrounded by the towering Himalayas. Pilots must navigate past mountains and execute either a curved approach through valleys or a steep, straight-in approach. It requires special training, you know? It requires complete focus, too. The aircraft they're flying is a Bombardier Dash 8 Q400 turboprop, a reliable regional airliner well-suited for this type of operation. The first officer, Rashid, is excited. This is a big day for her career. She's been looking forward to the challenging approach. But as she glances at Captain Sultan, something seems off. He doesn't look well. He appears agitated, stressed, short-tempered. He's muttering under his breath, cursing about something. Then the operations staff contacts them on the radio for routine communication. The captain's response shocks everyone. "I don't want 212. I want 211. I don't want to hear from you again. Keep your mouth shut," he says during communication. His tone is vicious, unprofessional, completely inappropriate. Agree? But then, as he turns his attention to First Officer Rashid, his demeanor shifts completely. His voice softens. He becomes calm, almost tender. "Don't be scared. I'm going to stay for another 3 months. I'm going to show these people right and left," he says. I don't know. From a pilot perspective, this is already a massive red flag, my friend. Erratic behavior, mood swings, aggression toward ground staff, but compassion toward the first officer. I mean, this is not normal, right? But First Officer Rashid, despite noticing the warning signs, chooses not to speak up. He's her instructor. He's a senior. She's new. The power gradient is too steep in the cockpit. So the air traffic control clears them for taxi. The aircraft pushes back and taxis to the runway. They depart Dhaka, climbing into overcast skies. Thunderstorms are in the area. Visibility isn't great in Kathmandu. The weather is marginal. And inside the cockpit? Well, let's say that the situation is about to get much worse. During the climb, Captain Sultan overhears a radio communication between operations and another US Bangla aircraft regarding fuel on board. Without verifying if the message was even meant for him, he explodes. "Operations, Bangla Star 211, he says, furious. "Bangla Star 211, go ahead," says the operations. "Why the hell do you need to know the onboard fuel? Why do you ask me for onboard fuel? You need to tell me now. I want a written explanation before I come to Dhaka," the captain screams. "Copied, sir. Wilco. Have a safe flight, sir," responds the operations guy. "I don't care about a safe flight. You just do your duty. Don't talk to me unless I call you," the captain says, enraged. "You know, this was worse than you think. I removed all the curses," he said when he was communicating with operations. Think about it. They're in the climb phase, one of the most critical parts of flight, and the captain is screaming in operations over something that has nothing to do with him. This is a severe violation of the sterile cockpit rule, which prohibits non-essential conversations during takeoff and landing phases. But Captain Sultan doesn't care. So he turns to First Officer Rashid. His voice softens again. "Even if I'm abusing others, you don't be afraid, Burri. See, I'm calling you Burri to show my love for you." Wow, that was a huge red flag, right? And the first officer, of course, sees the same way. She knows something is very wrong, but she remains silent. She's a junior, he's her instructor, she doesn't know what to do. She realizes this short 1-hour flight is going to feel much, much longer. 15 minutes pass. The weather outside turns cloudier. The weather inside the cockpit turns thunderous, let's say. Out of nowhere, Captain Sultan goes off on a rant about another young female pilot, Farhat Lamia Khaled, whom he had previously trained at the airline. Lamia was the worst trained in US Bangla. She said we made out in the cockpit. "She's not even worth approaching. She's ugly and she's fat," the captain says, enraged.
Researching for this episode, I found out that there were rumors within the company that the captain had been involved with Lamia and that she had filed a complaint against him, questioning his competency. So he breaks down. Tears stream down his face. He's weeping openly in the cockpit, saying, "I don't need Lamia. What does she know about flying? If I wanted to be with her, I could easily do that anytime. She's not innocent, your friend Lamia, but because of her, I had to resign." The first officer, Rashid, poor her, she's stunned. She doesn't know how to react. She sits in silence, hoping and praying they reach Kathmandu as soon as possible. But what she doesn't know is that things are going to get way, way worse. Then, something bizarre happens. You won't believe this, my friend. Captain Sultan lights a cigarette inside the cockpit and begins smoking. Yup, a blatant disregard for every safety regulation, for common sense, for professionalism. This is beyond unacceptable, right? This is a man having a complete mental breakdown at 20,000 feet with 71 people depending on him. And let me tell you something important about Captain Sultan's history. Back in 1993, while serving in the Bangladesh Air Force, he was removed from active duty after a psychiatric assessment diagnosed him with depression. He was grounded, but 9 years later, in 2002, he had himself re-evaluated by a different psychiatrist. This doctor declared him fit for flying. Based on that evaluation, he joined US Bangla in 2015. But here's the problem. Many pilots refuse to seek ongoing treatment for mental health issues because they fear it will end their careers. They try to manage their conditions themselves without proper medical attention. A good example is the flight Germanwings 9525, where a deeply depressed pilot hijacked his own flight and killed everyone on board. By the way, I'll leave the link on the description for you to watch later. And now, on March 12, 2018, Captain Abid Sultan is clearly not fit to fly. But nobody on board knows his history, and First Officer Rashid is too intimidated to challenge him. So, 1 hour into the flight, they're approaching Kathmandu. The passengers and cabin crew remain blissfully unaware of the turmoil in the cockpit. They've enjoyed a relatively peaceful flight, but things are about to fall apart completely.
Captain Sultan is still angry, still crying. First Officer Rashid tries desperately to get him focused on the approach. For the descent and approach into Kathmandu, Captain Sultan will be pilot flying. First Officer Rashid will be pilot monitoring.
This is standard for a training flight. But here's where the problems multiply. Captain Sultan needs to complete an approach briefing, a critical procedure where pilots discuss the plan for landing. But he doesn't have his approach charts with him. He's unprepared. He asks First Officer Rashid for her charts. She hands them over. He briefs the approach while looking at her charts. Incomplete. Rushed. Complacency seeping in because he's done this approach many times before. Then he hands the charts back to her and tells her to clip them to her side console. Think about it. He now has no access to the charts during the approach. The charts contain critical information, minimum altitudes, headings, where the mountains are, and etc. Without them, he's flying from memory in marginal weather. To make matters worse, First Officer Rashid makes several incorrect statements during the briefing, indicating she doesn't fully understand the procedures. But Captain Sultan doesn't correct her. The confusion isn't resolved, and in this state, unprepared, emotionally unstable, without charts, they begin their approach toward one of the most challenging airports in the world. So a few minutes later, Kathmandu approach contacts them. Descent to 13,500 feet, hold over Gras. Gras is a waypoint, a specific point in space that aircraft use for navigation. Based on their current speed, they'll arrive at Gras about 6 minutes early. Kathmandu is usually crowded airspace, so the pilots fully expect to be told to hold, which means fly in circles to delay their arrival. In preparation, First Officer Rashid programs the holding pattern into the flight management computer. There's another aircraft behind them, Buddha Air 282. Remember that plane because it's about to play a role in this chaos, okay? Kathmandu approach calls again. US Bangla 211, reduce speed, descend to 12,500 feet. Then, before they reach the holding point, approach control calls with good news. US Bangla 211, cleared direct approach, runway 02. No hold required.
The pilots acknowledge, but here's the critical mistake. They forget to remove the holding pattern from the flight computer. Does this remind you of another story, my friend? Yes, Pakistan Flight 8303? Same mistake, programming a hold, then forgetting to delete it when the plan changes. Do you remember what happened? I'll leave the link of this episode too on the description. So, Captain Sultan turns on the seatbelt sign and tells the cabin crew to prepare for landing. Then he lights another cigarette. Yes, another one. The aircraft is 3 minutes from Gras. Captain Sultan, holding his cigarette in one hand and trying to control the plane with the other, drops the cigarette on the floor. Oh no, I've dropped the cigarette. Where did it go? Oh, it's there on the left. Pick it up, it might catch fire, he says. First Officer Rashid starts searching for the cigarette on the cockpit floor while the plane is on approach to one of the world's most dangerous airports. I mean, how bizarre is this, my friend? From the cabin, the flight attendant calls, "Cabin secured." Then the controller, US Bangla 211, continue approach, runway 02. All these transmissions happen within seconds. The pilot's mental state, combined with these concurrent distractions, triggers confusion. The aircraft crosses Gras, and then, without any pilot input, the plane starts turning left. Of course, the autopilot is following the holding pattern that was programmed into the computer, right? The pattern they forgot to delete. The controller immediately notices, US Bangla 211, you're turning left, maintain heading. Captain Sultan, realizing the mistake, quickly switches to heading mode and turns the plane to 027 degrees, trying to get back on the correct approach path. But here's where he makes another critical error. When you switch to heading mode, the autopilot no longer follows the program navigation. You have to manually turn the plane at the right time. But Captain Sultan forgets this. He also forgets about the strong westerly crosswind pushing the plane to the right. The plane should turn to 022 degrees when it intercepts the final approach path. But Captain Sultan forgets to make the turn. The aircraft continues at 027 degrees. The crosswind pushes them further right.
They're drifting away from the airport, and in the overcast conditions with poor visibility, they have no visual reference. They're completely clueless that they're off course. Captain Sultan calls for the landing checklist. First Officer Rashid begins reading it. Landing gear, she says. Gear down, 3 green, the captain says. But the landing gear is not down. He's lying. Or he's so disoriented that he genuinely believes it's down without checking. Who knows? Moments later, as the plane descends, an alarm sounds. A loud horn, the landing gear unsafe warning. "Sir, landing gear is not yet set. Sir, speed, speed, speed," the first officer says, very worried. The captain responds nonchalantly. "No worry, no worry." He tells her to ignore the warning. Well, this is insane. The landing gear warning is there for a reason. You don't ignore it, agree? The plane is now almost alongside the airport, heading further away. From the controller perspective, it looks like the crew is trying to circle around to land from the opposite direction. So the controller calls, "BS-211, you were cleared for runway 02, but you are going toward runway 20. Assuming they want to land on runway 20, he clears them for that runway. But the crew is completely lost. They're expecting to see runway 02 in front of them. Captain Sultan, confused, confirms he wants runway 02. The controller, now realizing they're disoriented, instructs them to make a U-turn and join the downwind leg to set up for runway 02. Captain Sultan begins a right turn. The aircraft descends to 175 feet above the ground. Now the ground proximity warning explodes in the cockpit. "Too low, pull up." First Officer Rashid finally does a thorough scan of the instruments. She sees the landing gear is actually not down, despite what the captain said earlier. She initiates the extension. Meanwhile, Buddha Air 28-2, the other aircraft, is on final approach to the runway. ATC orders US Bangla to stay clear. If Buddha Air goes around, they'll fly right into the path where US Bangla is now flying. But Captain Sultan, confused and disoriented, continues his right turn instead of just making a U-turn. Right now, he's putting both aircraft in danger of collision.
Alarm bells ring across the control tower. The controller scrambles to instruct Captain Sultan to remain clear of runway 20. The plane keeps turning right, directly in the path of Buddha Air's potential go-around route. Thankfully, Buddha Air 282 lands successfully. They don't need to go around. One disaster averted, right? But for US Bangla 211, the nightmare continues. They still can't find the runway. They have no idea where they are. And then Captain Sultan realizes, finally, that they're not where they thought they were. He says, feeling guilty, "So I have done mistake. It happens, isn't it? It can happen since I was talking to you. Where is our VOR? Gone left, isn't it? So let me make a turn 15 degrees and come back to final." Notice how he tries to shift blame to the first officer. "Since I was talking to you," he said, as if his hour-long emotional breakdown is somehow her fault. By now, the plane has flown over the airport. They're on the western side. Captain Sultan continues turning right. The bank angle reaches 45 degrees. The descent rate exceeds 2,000 feet per minute. The ground proximity warning screams again, "Too low, pull up." Still, they can't see the runway. The controller says, "BS-211, confirm you have the runway in sight." The captain answers, "Negative, sir. Where is the runway?" The controller responds, "BS-211, turn right, and you have runway. Confirm you have the runway not in sight yet?" Yes, the phrasing is confusing. You should never ask someone to confirm a negative. But that's the least of their problems here, my friend. As the plane continues turning, it comes into the vicinity of runway 20. Finally, First Officer Rashid spots it and says, "Sir, runway, sir, 3 o'clock." Do you feel relieved now? Well, you should not, because from their current position, they cannot safely land. They need to be vectored around for a proper approach. But Captain Sultan, desperate and embarrassed, decides to make one last attempt to land on runway 20, not the runway 02 he's been cleared for. He's determined to get the aircraft on the ground at any cost. Captain Sultan makes a sharp, abrupt right turn back toward the runway. The plane dives at a steep angle. They're hurtling toward the ground at high speed.
The ATC is stunned. They never imagined the pilots would attempt to land from there. The plane approaches very close to the threshold of runway 20. The tower controller, seeing the aircraft maneuvering dangerously close to the ground and not aligned with the runway, hurriedly cancels the landing clearance. "Takeoff clearance canceled," he shouts. The phrasing is wrong, but the intent is clear. Abort the landing. Hearing the canceled clearance, Captain Sultan pulls up sharply. High bank angle. The plane climbs steeply and flies directly over the parked aircraft at the domestic terminal. And then both pilots see it simultaneously.
a new, more immediate danger. In all their erratic maneuvering, they're now headed straight for the ATC control tower. Inside the tower, all 8 controllers see the aircraft barreling toward them. They jump from their seats. They duck for cover, certain they're about to die. Captain Sultan struggles with the controls. He pulls the plane into a steep climb. The aircraft misses the tower by meters, barely. The controllers slowly stand up, hearts pounding, watching the aircraft fly over the taxiway. And then, the horrifying moment comes. The aircraft touches down on runway 20 with only its right main landing gear hitting the pavement, almost 1.7 kilometers from the runway threshold. The bank angle is 15 degrees. The aircraft is skidding sideways. The plane veers off the runway, it bounces on unpaved ground, crashes through the airport perimeter fence, and slides into a nearby field. 6 seconds later, fire erupts. Both pilots die, both flight attendants die. 47 of the 67 passengers die. Only passengers seated on the right side of the aircraft or in the front rows survive. 22 people pulled from the burning wreckage by rescuers. 71 people on board, 49 dead. All because a captain that had a mental breakdown, and nobody could stop him. And the investigation revealed a catastrophic combination of mental health crisis, intimidation, and some other serious problems, as you are going to know right now.
So what actually caused this tragedy, my friend? The investigation revealed a combination of mental health crisis, intimidation, spatial disorientation, and multiple procedural failures. Let me break this down from a pilot perspective. First, Captain Sultan's mental state. The cockpit voice recorder captured an hour-long emotional breakdown, crying, screaming at ground personnel, ranting about personal problems, chain smoking in the cockpit, completely unprofessional behavior that should have immediately disqualified him from flying that day. The investigation revealed his history. Discharged from the Bangladesh Air Force in 1993 due to depression, then re-evaluated in 2002 and declared fit. But toxicology tests after the crash didn't include screening for antidepressant medications. Was he flying under the influence of psychiatric drugs? We'll never know. What we do know is that he confessed during the flight that he'd resigned from the airline days earlier. He was anxious about his future, wondering what he'd do for a living. He mentioned he hadn't slept the night before. This severe stress likely contributed to his mental breakdown, impairing his ability to follow procedures and act rationally. Think about it. This was not a man fit to command an aircraft, but the system failed to catch it before he got in the cockpit with 71 people's lives in his hands. Second, the power gradient and intimidation. First Officer Rashid was 25 years old, on her first flight to Kathmandu, flying with a 52-year-old instructor captain. The hierarchy was massive. She saw the red flags, the aggression, the crying, the smoking, the unprofessional behavior, but she remained silent. Why? Fear, intimidation, cultural factors. She was new, he was senior. She'd heard him verbally abuse ground personnel and rant violently about another female pilot. Would she be next if she challenged him? The power imbalance was so severe that she couldn't intervene even as the situation spiraled out of control. Third, spatial disorientation and loss of situational awareness. The crew forgot to delete the holding pattern from the computer, they turned the wrong direction when it activated, they forgot to switch back to navigation mode, they didn't account for the crosswind, they had no visual reference in the overcast weather. They were completely lost, flying parallel to the runway while thinking it was in front of them. You know, when you lose situational awareness this badly, you stop, reset, and go around. You don't keep trying to salvage an approach that's gone completely wrong. But Captain Sultan's ego and determination to land at any cost overrode all rational decision-making.
Fourth, the procedural violations were staggering. No proper approach briefing, no access to charts during the approach, gear not extended when called for, ignoring gear warnings, violating sterile cockpit rules, smoking in the cockpit, multiple landing checklist calls with no proper completion. Each violation individually is serious. Combined, they created a guaranteed disaster. Fifth, the final approach was suicide. When they finally spotted the runway, they were in no position to land safely. They needed to go around, get vectored properly, and try again. Instead, Captain Sultan made a desperate diving turn toward the runway. High speed, wrong angle, wrong configuration. He flew over the domestic terminal, he nearly hit the control tower, and then he attempted a landing with a 15-degree bank angle, touching down halfway down the runway. The investigation concluded that this accident was entirely preventable. If Captain Sultan had been mentally fit to fly, if proper procedures had been followed, if First Officer Rashid had felt empowered to speak up, if they had executed a go-around when they got lost, this would never have happened. But the most damning finding? At multiple points during the flight, the crew could have simply advanced the throttles, climbed away, and tried again. But Captain Sultan seemed hell-bent on completing the approach from an impossible position. The reasons why? He took to his grave, right? Now, the question that I always have after an accident like this, what did the aviation industry learn from US Bangla Flight 211? Because this tragedy highlighted critical gaps in mental health screening, crew resource management, and the dangers of toxic power dynamics in the cockpit, right?
So first, mental health screening for pilots was scrutinized worldwide. The accident raised questions about how pilots with psychiatric histories are evaluated and monitored. Captain Sultan had been cleared to fly after treatment for depression, but was there adequate follow-up? Were there warning signs that were missed? Airlines began implementing more frequent mental health assessments and creating support systems for pilots dealing with stress, anxiety, or depression. Second, the importance of psychological safety in the cockpit became a major focus. First Officer Rashid saw numerous red flags, but felt powerless to intervene due to the steep hierarchy and her instructor captain's intimidating behavior. Airlines reinforced training on crew resource management, emphasizing that junior crew members have not just the right, but the duty to speak up when safety is compromised, regardless of rank or seniority. Third, cultural factors in aviation safety received renewed attention. In some cultures, challenging authority, especially from a junior to a senior, is extremely difficult. Aviation is an international industry, and safety protocols must transcend cultural norms that discourage speaking up. Fourth, the accident reinforced the critical importance of go-around discipline. When an approach goes wrong, when you're lost, disoriented, or not stabilized, you must go around, no exceptions. The ego-driven determination to save a bad approach has killed countless people. Modern training emphasizes that going around is not a failure, it's professionalism. The lesson for pilots? Mental health matters. If you're not fit to fly, don't fly. Seek help without shame. And if you're the junior pilot and you see something wrong, speak up. Your silence could cost lives. And the lesson for airlines? Create environments where pilots can report mental health issues without fear of losing their careers. Monitor pilots for signs of distress, and eliminate toxic power dynamics that prevent junior crew from intervening. This is what I would tell the airlines, because I think mental health in aviation is not a weakness, it's a safety issue. If you're struggling, reach out. Don't fly alone with demons, right? All right, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and show me some love, my friend, please, because I worked hard for days to bring you one more episode. And subscribe to the channel if you're not, okay? I am Captain Jack Mercer. Thanks for flying with me today, and see you next.